Okay. Call the order the June 1st, 2026 meeting of the City of Hudson Industrial Development Agency. Before we move to the full agenda, we will hold the Finance Committee meeting first.
Okay. This opens the Hudson IDA Finance Meeting for June 2026. For agenda today, first is the approval of the minutes of the May 4th meeting. Does anyone have any comments on the minutes? You can.
You today.
Just me and you. Can I get a motion?
Motion.
And I will second to approve the finance meeting minutes of the day. Okay, there is no bank reconciliation to review today since it's the first of the month, so that will be for next month. I don't believe that has to be an official agenda even, but I'm probably going to keep it on the agenda and I just, that's a way for me to not forget to get somebody else to sign off on it, frankly. Bills, if you look on the back page, the first two bills are the ones that have been standing around waiting for additional escrow for 620 Union. I believe we're anticipating some additional expenses to be on these as we close out the as that pilot agreement expired. It's all the work that's Chris is working on, get that done. The other ones that were outstanding as of last month, you'll notice are gone, so we've made good on all of those. So the only current bill is both the housing bill for general services. Can I get a motion to approve the bills? Sure. I will second it. All in favor? Aye. And that's it. Are there any comments from the public on our very exciting finance?
I'm always excited by finance, and Heather, I just want to express my deep appreciation.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Anybody online? Okay. Having no public comments, can I have a motion and a second to adjourn the finance meeting?
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second. All in favor?
Hey, thank you guys.
That was a public comment. I hope it's recorded as such.
We'll return to the agenda for the full IDA meeting. First is approval of the minutes for the May 4th, 2026 meeting. Has everyone had a chance to look at it? Great. Are there any questions, comments, edits?
My only comment is, having sat through it, listened to it, and then read through it twice, I still couldn't explain to you the entire structure of Galvin and Bart. And having said that, I thought the minutes were accurate.
Thank you. All right. May I get a motion to approve the minutes from May 4th?
So moved.
Excellent. A second?
Second.
Great. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
No opposed. The minutes have been approved and passed. The next item on our agenda is, I believe, a change of meeting date in September. It falls on Labor Day. Would the following Monday work for everyone's schedule?
Should. Hold that thought for a second.
All right,
That would be the 13th.
I believe so.
14th.
14th. All right, there we go.
Works for
I just
me.
wanted everybody to meet on a Sunday. I'm sorry.
You're getting a Labor Day off, but you're gonna have to work Sunday.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, the 14th.
Yes.
Great. May I get a motion to move the September meeting from the 7th to the 14th? Excellent, thank you. A second?
Good.
Good. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, we have
Time will be the same.
same time, yep, same time, same place, September 14th.
September.
Yes. Oh, for July 4th, no. So I made that mistake earlier today. So. All right, the next item on the agenda is the Finance Committee report. So would you mind sharing that report with us?
Sure. So, in the finance meeting, we approved the minutes of our May meeting. There was no bank reconciliation, as it is only the first of the month. One bill was approved by the finance committee to be passed on and approved by the full board, and there were no public comments. I apologize, there was a public comment. That's all. Sorry, Lloyd.
Does anybody on the full committee have any questions in regards to anything mentioned or the bills? Hearing none, may I get a motion to approve this month's bills? Excellent. A second? Excellent. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Excellent. The bills have been approved. Our next item on policy is our policy review. So I'm gonna share floor with our lawyer Chris Shale to walk us through the open meeting law, and then we'll move on to uniform tax exemption policy.
Thank you. And Michael requested that we have a review of the existing policies for update, and particularly including the video conferencing policy and the uniform tax exemption policy. Did you want to introduce this, or did you want to?
I think that, obviously, open meeting law has a broad mandate. It relates to not only the public notice of meetings, it relates to minutes of meetings, when things have to be posted, when and as well as when you can go into an executive session. But I thought the video conferencing piece of it would be important for those of you, several of your members, and also for the public to understand. If there's someone who's on the IDA board but is on the screen, they can participate, but they can't vote. And the public might not understand that if you were not from time to time review these policies. And I think often they come up when we have an issue. For instance, if you weren't to have a quorum with one seat empty, it's still a quorum based on 7 members. So there are a lot of technical things that will come up as one-offs, but not only the open meeting policy that was an outgrowth of COVID. The video conferencing piece was an outgrowth of COVID. And I think the reviewing our uniform tax exemption policy really resulted from a request from the chair, who had attended a conference of mayors. And the issue came up as to what is your uniform policy say? So again, we thought it would be a good opportunity to go through those. And
So I'm just going to touch on a few things on the video conferencing policy. The basis for this is a document that was created by the Committee on Open Government, which is a division of the Department of State. And during COVID, there were several executive orders of session that allowed us to hold meetings online. And then after COVID, the legislature adopted some provisions for video conferencing, but they're very limited. They require a whole bunch of steps. And so we want to make sure that every time we try to use this, we are following the steps. One of the good things is that you're already doing video meetings. You're already set up to do video meetings. So you can hear each other, you can see each other. Those are some of the basics. You can't just be on a phone, right? You have to be able to see and hear each other. And so you always have to have a quorum in person. So that's a requirement. You can't just all be on a video. So this is meant to be not a way to facilitate video meetings, but rather a way to accommodate the occasional situation where somebody has to attend because of, extraordinary circumstances. And so the extraordinary circumstances description comes from general language that was provided by the Department of State's division, but was tailored, generally to try to provide some explanation of what kinds of situations could be considered. So for example, because the person is extraordinary circumstances include disability, illness, caregiving responsibilities, or other significant or unexpected factor event which precludes the member's physical attendance. It may include vacation periods or periods when a member is working away from the residence in the city, not exceeding 4 weeks in a calendar year, or when a member is unable to attend as a result of unexpected travel difficulties. So they're supposed to notify the chair and copy the staff so that they can, make the necessary announcements. and obviously determine whether or not, as a result, we are gonna have, able to have a quorum person. So, that's why it's so important to communicate with staff if something does come up. And we don't, necessarily want to document what the particular issue was, because we don't really want to get involved in somebody's particular illness or disability issue. But we do need to document and have board members document to staff so that we can reflect it in the minutes. You know, so-and-so, was participating, by video because they were unable to attend due to an extraordinary circumstance, right? So we need to say that so that we document what happened, right? And in that situation, the person is able to, if we can see and hear them, participate and vote as long as there's a quorum present here, okay?
So
If
they
there's not a
can't,
quorum, they can vote if all those things are followed, right? And if they weren't all followed, then they can't vote. The only thing they can really do is monitor, because anyone can watch a meeting, right? But they're not allowed to participate because, you know, they're not physically present, you know. And if we don't have a quorum, we can't have a meeting, so, right, in person.
Is there a limit to the time frame in which somebody can say that they're unable to participate?
I mean, I think practically speaking, we're supposed to, in your case, because you can accommodate video conferencing, it's a little bit easier. You've already told people in your announcement that you're always going to accommodate video conferencing. If a municipality doesn't have that set up, they need enough time to get 24 hours notice to say, hey, we're gonna do this by video conference. You know, you're gonna have the public can participate. Because one of the rules is that if you're gonna let a member participate, you have to be able to let the public, you know, view as well. So, okay, so it's a little easier for you. You've already got this set up, you know, it's easier to accommodate a last minute request, shall we say. And we have, let's see, right,
if you're gonna miss a meeting,
Yeah.
and you notify the chairman and staff,
right.
does that have to be in a public meeting or can that be informally?
Well, you should notify them ahead of the meeting. I mean, yeah.
It's right, but you have to then be able to demonstrate to the staff and to the chair that you meet the criteria that, you know, it's not just.
Right, and again, we don't want to be invasive about what the reasons are, but we need to document that there is a reason and it's not just that you had another appointment and you can't be there right now, you know. The intention, clearly the intention of the legislature, because of the quorum requirement, is that they want you to be here in person. And there's legislative intent to the effect that, you know, how come we didn't go to all video meetings like we were able to do in COVID because it was convenient? And the answer is because we want you to do that. We don't have to be there in person, but we want you to be there.
Well, and at one point in COVID, you could only be on video if you were at a location where members of the public could also join. So I remember we had a situation where one of our board members was on the Cape and went to a public library, found a room where, because they didn't want someone randomly showing up at the guest house.
Well, it is the case that you can still have a quorum in multiple locations. So for example, state agencies will have, you know, a New York and an Albany office, and they will publish notice of a meeting in both locations. And that they can have board members attending as part of the quorum, attending in person at those locations because they and the public can be there and they're all on video screens together. That's probably not something that's easy for this group to accommodate, so may not be something that we're gonna be doing, but it, you know, that's an authorized way to do things. It just isn't very practical most of the time, right? For this group anyway. So, I think, those are the things I wanted to point out about this, and we could go on to the tax stuff, but I think that might be helpful. Did you want to ask any questions at this point? Thank you for that. Oh, the other thing I just want to note on open meetings, while I'm at it, is that there's a difference between an executive session and an attorney-client session, right? An attorney-client session is a meeting with your attorney to discuss with your attorney, to ask questions and have legal advice given to you about legal matters. The motion to go into an attorney-client session is a motion to go into an attorney-client session with counsel, right? Counsel has to be present, right? I can be present on the video, but I have to be present, or your other counsel, whatever. So in the case of an executive session, that's for the purpose of the board having a meeting, which is not statutorily required to be held in public for a variety of reasons. You have to state the reason that you're going into executive session, and it's got to be a reason that's authorized by the open meeting or by the open meeting law. Okay, so when you're going in, you have to stop for a minute, not just say I'm going into executive session. You have to say I'm going into executive session for the purpose of discussing, you know, right? And it has to be.
Then as a
August.
discussion moves on, if it gets beyond the scope of what the exception was that allowed you to go into executive session, you have to stop that discussion. and go back
Absolutely.
into the- Absolutely.
Right, and it's a motion to go in and a motion to go out, so you need to be able to share with the staff, if they're not sitting in with you. Those motions so that they can report for the minutes, okay? Yeah.
During executive session, can a commissioner or board vote on any issues, or is that after?
There are some exceptions, but not for you.
You have to come out of executive session and,
We can go into that, but yeah, there are a few exceptions where you can, but it's generally, you're gonna wanna go out and have that area. It's for the
Just to be
purpose of
clear,
discussing strategy or, labor matters or,
there are only 8 exceptions. Now, a lot of things can fall under exceptions, under each of those headings. But, from our experience here and through the local development corporations, it's, to discuss someone's personal financials, discuss an employment, related matter.
and
Negotiate sale of
particular
property.
employment matter, right? When you're discussing employment matters, you're not just discussing whether you should, have X staff, number of staff positions. That's a budgetary discussion. It's, are we gonna hire someone, who are we gonna hire for this position? And we're reviewing resumes or, that sort of thing. Those are things that are properly, right? It's not just personnel, right? It's hiring and firing, promotion or demotion of a particular person. It's that kind of thing, right? Sure.
And then with respect to, the sale or purchase of property
Mhm.
or negotiating a contract, you don't want to be doing that in public, but you do have to come back out, and explain why you're taking action.
So then that again is where the information could tend to affect the price of the acquisition.
While you're talking about it in public, someone goes out and buys it out from under you.
Right, so. But again, it's very fact specific, so.
And I don't think the IDA has ever got, this IDA, I don't recall it ever. going into an
I couldn't tell you.
But if you needed to, the exceptions are there.
So turning to the tax exemption policy, the IDA is required to have a uniform tax exemption policy. And it's required to have certain components of the policy. The IDA, when it makes a selection of a project and agrees to provide certain financial assistance, that decision at the end of the day is discretionary, which is different from, for example, planning board decisions, which are supposed to be made on the basis of implementing the particular statutory and zoning requirements that apply. So however, you still need to go through a series of findings and make the findings that are required by the statute. So you are supposed to provide a basis for providing the financial assistance if you do decide to provide the financial assistance. So there are several uniform criteria that are statutory, and what we did in creating this document originally was to identify those as such. So that if you were thinking about doing an amendment, it was a little easier to see, okay, these are things the statute requires, such as taking into account job creation, tax exemption costs, what's the effect on the tax jurisdictions, things like that are all things that the statute says you should take into account and you should consider. So as a result, those are pieces of information that the application requires that applicants provide. And so it's something that is included in the review that you're supposed to undertake to determine whether or not, a project is worthy of consideration. So the additional criteria that you see are criteria that were developed by a prior board and incorporated into this policy. So those are things that you may modify, add to, whatever is appropriate from a policy perspective. Those are policy guided goals. And then so those are things you can take back and look at, and maybe you want to workshop them at some point, whatever is appropriate. Then we have.
I think if we could just,
Yes.
go through the 11 criteria quickly.
Okay,
I think if you look at the first one, obviously is create or retain jobs. Estimated value of the tax exemption, which is why we go through the economic analysis that's presented to the agency before a vote. Whether the taxing jurisdiction shall be reimbursed by the project occupant if it does not fulfill the purpose for which the exemption was provided, or a clawback. The impact of the project, on proposed business and economic development projects in the vicinity, the amount of private sector investment or that's generated or likely to be generated, demonstration of public support, likelihood of the project being accomplished in a timely fashion, the effect of the proposed project on the environment. And again, we go through the environmental review and often use the determination by the planning board or other agency. The effect of the extent to which the project will utilize, to the extent practical, resources, energy efficiency, green technologies, and does it involve a brownfield site? Does it involve LEED certification? Does it involve significant reliance on renewable energy? Does it involve creation of renewable energy itself with consistent with zoning? And to the extent with which the project will require the provision of additional services, education, transportation, police, fire, medical service. We've had discussions, with the previous projects, how extensive will the ambulance or police calls be? And then the extent to which the project will provide additional sources of revenue for the community. That also plays to the economic analysis and multiple effect that is in the financial report. And then, as Chris mentioned, the agency retained the public policy group at the Albany Law School to review our policies with respect to evaluating a project and in conjunction with a review of policies of other IDAs throughout the capital region. And that's where we got into the additional criteria. And as Chris was saying, will these all be minimum wage or will there be some minimum wage rate that's above the minimum wage, which might be considered more a living wage? And will it create on a regional wealth creation, both outside the city and impact the county and the city? Will it provide any type of workforce training so that and with many of our projects, we've had training requirements with respect to opening a new facility. The difficulty we've had there is when you open a new hotel and you have a training program, when you replace 2 or 3 employees, you're really the people who are co-workers are training them as to how that work gets done. You don't necessarily can afford to bring in a team to run an organized training program. Is there a positive economic impact? Will there be construction and subcontractor material acquired by the developer in the community where the project is located? Does it support local business, retention of existing businesses? Does it help develop an economically distressed area? Does it eliminate or reduce blight? Does it contribute to programs designed to provide needed services? Then alignment of local planning and development efforts, impact on affordable housing goals, an additional positive impact on goods and services provided. And that really gets into some of regional tourism support, MWBE commitments, EEO workforce utilization, and promotes local and small businesses. Now, I think the intent here was not to simply address the 11 statutory criteria and put some weight on each of those items in the analysis. But what was important, to the city at the time that these were put in place. And I think that when you look at, are they purchasing locally? Are they going to hire local? Are they in alignment with the city plans and guidance? Because of the housing affordability issue that jumped out, you might have in the future the designated business or industry. If there were no hotels in Hudson, you might have put that you wanted to provide a focus that they get extra points if they were particular in the business or industry. And then what we did there was we went further and they created a scoring chart. And I think that, I guess the other items here on page 3. Obviously, you have to have a signed application. The agency returns the right to require appraisals, and valuation, which we are go through a very extensive evaluation of each project in that regard. They have to deposit fees for escrow, to pay the professional services that are incurred by the agency with respect to an individual project. Obviously, there's some statutory, no funds for the agency shall be used if the completion would result in removal of industrial or manufacturing facilities. The application includes a statement that the project could be undertaken without financial assistance. We call that the but-for test. Then but for the incentives, the project won't go forward. That should be evaluated. There should be a statement that the developer is in substantial compliance with all local rules and state regulations, and that would be in the financing documents where they would make a representation and warranty that that's the case. And if the application is denied, an applicant should be denied if its owner or principals have been granted financial assistance and failed to meet objectives, substantially unmet other obligations, have outstanding tax, real estate tax bills or other fees owed to government, including the city, or have been involved in criminal activities or have been adjudicated in bankruptcy. And I think most of those are fairly understandable. But when we go through some of the evaluations and some of the analysis, and when Chris prepares the resolutions, there's an attempt to specifically identify which of these criteria is being evaluated in the findings. So that if they're, public understands that we've gone through the process that's put in front of us, but if there's an Article 78 filed against the agency that that's a demonstrated, documented list of things that you reviewed in terms of the project. We did have a project where several people at a public hearing raised substantial issues relating to various aspects of the project, but none of those were within the scope of the IDA. They were parking. We can't reopen a decision by the planning board with respect to parking at the IDA. There was a question, if it was a hotel, could they provide notice to the social service commissioner every night as to how many available emergency beds could be obtained by the county if there were a need for them? Could they create a taxing district that would reimburse or subsidize any increase in assessed value in the neighborhood that had been attributable to the fact that any blight was removed by having the new development? But there was some issues with respect to could they use the facility if it rained for the summer camp program? We met and went through all of these issues with the people in that project, and we all agreed. We agreed that many of the things they raised were issues that related to that the city needed to address, but that it was not within the scope of the statutory evaluation to address those at the IDA. And in some cases, we did follow up with them with respect to ideas on how we could address some of those other problems. So it's and I do think because the IDA's policy has been not to approve a project unless it has previously been approved by local planning, zoning.
Well, that's unless there's a specific finding that it's needed. So for example, that has happened where there's an urgency and financing application and there's a request to the IDA to consider an action. So then the IDA has to make sure seeker is done. can be done, separately if it's not a type 1. So the IDA has taken action on occasion because someone wants a commitment that they're gonna be able to show their financing entity that they're applying to for a grant and other, state funding in particular. I have this kind of a pilot deal that has been committed to by the IDA, right? So that is one of the justifications. So
So
they
you wouldn't close, we wouldn't close without. I think it's been this policy of this IDA.
the policy in here says unless they decide, unless the IDA.
You have the
decides.
ability, but in practice, you have stuck to that, and we do that at the same at the county IDA. You don't want to be putting the planning board or zoning board of appeals in a position where the applicants come in and say, well, your IDA approved this, why aren't you on board? And then this chart, I think, does warrant some review, the matrix.
That's 20.
I'll go back to that. Someday we can blow this up for you. We have it on a big 11 by 17, and we're going through it. But if you go across the scaled evaluation criteria, which is the second dark gray section, there's first column are points. Then, the number of jobs created, if you're creating 5 to 9, you get 1 point. If you're creating 50, you get 3 points. Jobs retained, equally opportunity to get points. Projected wages, if you're just going to pay the current state minimum wage across all job categories, you don't get any points. And, again, at or above $15 an hour, that may be 17 now, and those are sometimes why you should go through this on an annual basis just to address that. Economic impacts on the city, retain jobs, supports local business clusters. The project is in an economically distressed area. All of the things tied back to the list that you saw previously. For purchases of construction materials and labor within the city or within the county. Obviously, the issue is in many respects, we don't have suppliers that can provide everything that's needed for a particular project. And so, we try to ensure a percentage of in that category. And I think the way this is written, the IDA could award those points based on what they felt the appropriate percentage for each project was. So they knew that you could get 50% of the labor and materials through local purchases. You don't have to have 100%. If you know it's only going to be 20%, you could award points based on that, but that'd be an evaluation that you would undertake. Workforce training, whether it's affordable housing and environmentally sensitive or environmentally conscious. And then the final additional positive impacts on goods and services and the creativity of the project. But again, I would think that, with 4 new members of the IDA, that it might be useful at a future meeting to have a discussion about these topics. And are there things that we did this in the fall? There'll be things that you have identified in your tenure since you took on new responsibilities that you'd like to see, if you'd like to start to see particular project or a particular effort, these things can be changed.
Thank you.
We just
Jump back to the section.
I'm just gonna touch on cost benefit, so that you're required to undertake a cost benefit analysis. That doesn't mean you have to hire a third-party consultant.
Page 5.
There's a tool that the IDA staff has developed that provide a basic cost benefit that just covers, this is what the estimated cost of assistance is. This is what the estimated impact housing and taxes. In some cases, the IDA staff's recommended a more comprehensive evaluation with a consultant. So that's something that the IDA can require if it so chooses. Then there are several different project categories for an exemption schedule. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time on these, but these are the standard exemptions that the IDA has identified in its policy. If it is not going to be looking to consider one of these exemption categories, then we have to follow a deviation process. Deviation process involves sending out a notice to the affected taxing jurisdictions and the public. This is the type of schedule we're proposing. It's a deviation from our policy schedule, our standard schedules. And here are all the reasons why we're proposing to, the considerations that we're taking into account and considering the project. And so we have to go through that process in order to approve a project. So again, that's just procedural, but it does require having a lot of information before us in order to make that decision. Okay. And I think Mike, the categories here, is it category 3?
Is the uniform pilot of most IDAs based on section 485B of the real property tax law.
Right.
And you could, and if the taxing jurisdictions involved have adopted and opted in to 485B, then it comes as of right. But it, and I believe one of the taxing jurisdictions here they have, but if you're not going to be able to get all three, and you're not going to get the sales tax exemption or the mortgage tax exemption, even if you had it as of right, because the municipalities had opted in.
So in the past, the idea is considered variations, for example, in some of the housing projects where because they have a fixed, usually the low-income housing projects will have a fixed income stream. They're looking for a longer term agreement so that it aligns with their financing plan with the state, for example. So sometimes that's one of the rationales that's considered in, considering a longer term than what's here. It's very case by case, though. So,
And but then, as Chris pointed out, you would have to identify that it was a deviation from these three policies. And that go through the whole process of a public hearing. Well, you have to have a public hearing.
right,
Anyway,
Right.
it's more than $100,000 of incentives being offered.
but we need the deviation notice.
And
Right.
and an example was when we did the Providence Hall and Skylar Court project. They are it's going to be they committed to a 30-year contract with HUD to maintain Section 8 voucher tenants. And we only, the best pilot that you could obtain under this model is a 15-year pilot. Also, because the rents are fixed by the federal government and the income levels are established by the government, it's often that those types of projects, the real property taxes are based on what's called shelter rent. And that's basically rent plus the utilities. And in the case of Skylar Court, Providence Hall, they requested a 5% shelter rent. And the IDA, after evaluating that, approved a 7% shelter rent. I believe Hudson, the first project you've done, right?
That's terrible.
Hudson Terrace was 10% shelter rent.
That is correct.
And so, again, depending on the type of project you're looking to incentivize, there are variations. With a low-income housing tax credit project, there's no mortgage, so or it's exempt by the state, so you don't give the mortgage tax exemption. With some IDAs, people will ask for a percentage. There are three incentives. And the percentage of them is, 50% for the pilot, 30% for the sales tax, and 20% for the mortgage. If they're not taking one, they ask you to prorate it, but that doesn't often happen. Sure.
So just quickly, the IDA is required to adopt standard form agreements. So we have done that in the past. We have standard form agreements for the pilot and for the uniform project agreement. Those essentially embody these policy provisions. So if we change the policy, we're going to make some modifications to those form agreements. Every agreement is tailored to a particular project to an extent, but we have a standard agreement that's a template for us to use. And then, the sales and use tax exemption and the mortgage tax exemption, again, those are additional incentives that the IDA can grant. Those are There's a particular set of requirements for essentially implementing and monitoring those, but basically they get taken into account in the cost benefit analysis. So that's part of the analysis that you're gonna do to determine what's needed and what the impact is. And I just want to note, we talked about deviations. You also are required to have a recapture policy, meaning a policy for what happens if an entity does not comply with your requirements. And so all of the agreements contain a series of provisions that say if certain things happen, you're out of compliance, and the IDA can consider recapture. There's a process in the documents and in your policy for going through that consideration. It's not just, hey, we changed our mind, we decided to pull some money back. It's a process, and it would be documentation. If you're reviewing the particular facts and circumstances and the case that the applicant might make about what happened and why they were not able to meet the requirements. But in a proper case, the IDA could demand a certain percentage of the tax incentives to be returned back. Okay.
Also, with the, another deviation that this IDA has, considered and approved, number of projects is, if you looked at this schedule, the exemption that's provided on page 5 is calculated by taking the actual assessed value in each of the years that are identified, and calculating the discount based on the local tax rates. There have been projects where there was a request for locking those in based on assumptions. And that has occurred, but again, it was demonstrated as to why it was needed, and it was done on some projects, but not others.
Treated as a variation, right?
The example, the depot lofts, they are based on actual assessment. And that can go both ways. There can be times where and I think the longer you go out, the less you want to tie into those types of fixed payments as opposed to payment as based on what the assessed value might be. The other thing that we've worked on is that whatever is put in the application and whatever is approved by the agency with respect to the dollar amount of the benefit cannot be exceeded without revisiting it by the agency. So if you say that you're gonna have a $10 million mortgage, so you get a $125,000 exemption, you come back and say, well, I need a $15,000 mortgage. You're
gonna have a $15,000 mortgage, but it's not gonna increase the tax exemption unless you go back and reevaluate the cost benefit analysis.
And when you open that, you open up the entire project.
So the pilot payments themselves, of course, are not kept by the IDA. They have to be, according to statute, remitted to the affected tax jurisdictions, unless the affected tax jurisdictions were to approve otherwise, in a certain case. That hasn't happened here, but it can happen. It's statutorily permitted, but they would have to approve that. Otherwise, it gets split in the same percentages as taxes get split. And that's something that Heather does as treasurer. Then there are fees that are charged by the IDA. They charge closing fees, initial fees. Should review those periodically, annually, probably, to make sure that they're aligned with what your costs are and what your needs are. You're generally setting up escrows to cover outside costs. You need to cover some of those internally. General costs shouldn't cover by the IDA, but costs that are particular to the project, you're trying to, have the project carry those as a rule. Now, you could decide that you were gonna not do that in a particular case. If there were a particular type of project that you really wanted to incentivize and you wanted to not charge a fee for those projects or charge a different fee for those projects, you could do that. But you'd want to make that, decision based on policy.
There are a number of, right now, our policy is 1% of the total project cost. And there are IDAs now that you're looking at 25, 30, $40 million projects who have a sliding scale. So the first 10 million is at 1%. But I know of several, the Ulster County IDA had that kind of a scaled payment, but they went back to a full 1%.
Do you know what? Curiosity?
They wanted the money. They felt if you're gonna build a $40 million project, We also have I believe we have an ongoing annual fee of modest,
So, right.
$1,000 or.
Right, there's a fee that's designed to cover, basically the ongoing cost of monitoring. So all of these projects are required to be monitored as well on an annual basis, and you need to make your report in Paris, which is the, system that the ABO uses to, take in information. So you have to file this report by certain deadlines every year, including your financial information and information about compliance by each of these projects with their requirements. So that's a pretty substantial, staff commitment to make sure that you are monitoring these, getting reports from them, looking at whether or not they met the goals that they set or that, were approved for them. And so those are things that have to be reported in Paris, and ABO looks at that. They audit IDAs all the time in compliance with these things. And I guess one more thing, ABO does audit you for your website. They audit you for, they can audit you for anything, but they frequently audit those kinds of things. They will look at whether or not all your board members have completed your training on time. They will look at, all of those types of compliance things are fair game. So,
And each of the deals, or each of the project documents have a exhibit called special conditions. And often, generally, there's a requirement that the project report annually, but we have proposed on certain projects that certain information be reported quarterly. And there's also a definition of, we generally give 3 years to the developer from the time it's approved. That had been extended on several projects during COVID. But you either have a 3-year hard completion date, or you have to either lose the benefits or you have to come in and get an extension.
Great. Thank you for this. I think makes sense in the coming months to find some time to criteria, so what else might be out there. But thank you both. And actually, Chris, your last comment is a perfect segue to the next thing on our agenda. Required authorities budget office training. There was an ABO training last week, I believe, on Friday. If folks have participated, attended, make sure to send your certificate to the staff here, to the team here. Where, just to you? Okay,
Yes.
not to everyone?
No,
Okay,
please.
fine.
We're gonna have an award ceremony.
Exactly. Yes, no, okay. Is there a deadline upon which, 1 year? Okay, great, so. Excellent.
It'd be nice if it was earlier than that, but with vacations and stuff, it doesn't.
And I think they tell you it's gonna be a lot longer than it actually is.
Yeah,
The
they-
training, yes,
well, it can be. I have seen them go for a long time, depending on questions.
yes. Yes. All right, next up, administrative director's report.
Because we only have 6 minutes left, and there really has not been significant updates, except for the pocketbook factory. You'll recall I reported at the last meeting, we had received a FOIL request. And I had responded to that. I had offered an email to the person that initiated the request to meet with them. I have not heard back. And one of the things that relates to the fact that there's reporting requirements and then a report by staff to the IDA as to what that report provided was that it was due 30 days, 60 days after the end of a quarter. And for the pocketbook factory, the project was determined to be completed on December 31st of 2025. So their first quarter of operations ended on March 31st. And their first deadline would have been May 31st, which they met, but I have not completely finished my review, so I can report to you as to whether they have met the requirements. I believe they have, but I want to put that memo to you. So that will be available before the next meeting. But again, we wanted it to be clear to the request of the FOIL that the IDA has not taken any of the actions or reviews that were requested for documentation. because the report wasn't due until last Friday. But it also demonstrates that we have to have systems in place to be able to monitor these things, because in years 6 and 7. So if somebody new at the company doesn't realize they need to have a report, it becomes problematic. Just to review, we have the Pocketbook Factory, the Depot Lofts, the SEC 7 Hudson Foods, Providence Hall, Skylar Court, Crescent, and we will have an update for you at the next meeting on 620 Union. And we have had no new inquiries or applications at this point, but I suspect there may be some.
So that FOIL request on the agenda is for pocketbook owners that are what for
Yes.
lumps.
Uh,
There'll be a moment for public comment, yeah.
I think it was, I'm sorry, that was a we have not received one for Hudson Lofts yet, but since we put it on the agenda, we're asking for one, I guess.
Yes, manifest.
There was a typographical error, it was Pocketbook Factory.
Okay. Excellent. All right, any questions for coming out of the administrative director's report? Great, all right, first start with, see if there's any public comments online. All right, hearing none in the room,
Yes, sir. Hi, Joe.
hello,
It's so good to see you. I want to be brief, and by way of introduction, I think all of you know me, Lloyd Walton Kenning. Not just your casual observer here and around some 3 years when I first showed up on the scene at the Common Council, I introduced, I know we're respectful. Would you do me a favor, not interrupt this whole thing out? Thank you. This threw me off. So, yeah, when I first got here 3 years ago and I started attending meetings, I introduced myself as your voice of reason. Well, now I'm embarking on a new endeavor. I'm researching and looking at restoration of a historic landmark here in Hudson, and very interested in moving forward. And perhaps this is just by way of info. So now it's like the bright light that started, as Joe knows, the HDC was looking for a marketing campaign April 28th, and I came up with this idea, the bright light. And I know time's running short, so I will be brief and just outline the concept here. The bright light Hudson is like something to attract people to Hudson. All right, so we have a lot of very creative, imaginative groups, but they need to be pulled together in a certain way, and the detracting elements need to be, accounted for accordingly and hopefully brought up to the bright light. So the initial project so it's all about restoration. Restoration, if we can get our human dignity and decency and joy and delight back, that would be like the restoration. I don't know if it's restoration or reconstitution. It's still, very much in the works. So the first project that we will be looking to undertake, the bright light, would be the restoration of the Austin Hudson Railroad Shop, which I introduced first at the mayor's first town hall, May 18th. He expressed interest in the concept of railroading, and I know he's a great fan of the railroads, and I want to thank him for meeting with me last Friday. I reintroduced this on that same day, just an hour later, at the informal meeting of the Common Council, the idea of restoring, a historic landmark, 1850s, very unique structure, architecturally, it's very old, long beams. It's got, masonry, very distinct architectural characteristics. And just to wrap it up really quickly, so this is not just one project. So the bright light transforms into shimmer. Shimmer is like a whole social engagement concept where we actively work on pulling everybody together. It could be one of the most magnificent things here for Hudson to lead the way. It's always been my idea that Hudson would lead the way, and just wrapping it all up here. So what is shimmer? What is, thank you.
is there an ask?
I'm wrapping it up.
Is there an ask for the IDA? We are at time.
Well, I
Been
just wanted to,
Been very respectful of the amount of time you've had the floor.
how long have I had the floor?
4 minutes.
Well, can I just summarize?
No.
Why don't we
Is there
pass
an
it
ask
out?
for
We'll
the
add a
IDA?
copy and we'll
You
distribute
can
it.
add it to the record.
Yep.
Terrific.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
two
And
very
thank you.
quick things. I will be sending out later this week when the agenda and details are available. The New York State Economic Development Council's IDA training program. It's a half-day session. Several members went previously. We will pay for it's in Clifton Park this year, so you don't have to go somewhere overnight. It's July 16th for the day, but we will get, the details to be released on Thursday or Friday.
Actually, there is possibly an app.
No, public comment has closed at this time. I'm
There
sorry.
is possible.
Public comment has closed.
And just give me a moment, please. I just want to thank the IDA. This is my last meeting as your administrative director. And I've had a great time and I look forward to supporting our new CEDC president who will assume the job of both the county and city IDA administrative director, John Santanato. And I look forward to working with him and continuing to assist you in the future, but it's been fun being your leader.
Make a comment?
Yes, you may.
Mike was one of the first people I met after you appointed me to the planning board. And I enjoyed all of the folks that I met. We sat in this room and I was so deeply impressed with the depth of your knowledge, the scope of your sort of strategic thinking. And you've been a good advisor and I appreciate having you available to ask questions and understand things better. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
And by the way, I want your phone number so I can continue to do that.
Here at least till September 30th, this is John.
Gonna have to pay his per.
And before asking for a motion to close out, I just would also like to add, thank you for your leadership here at CEDC alongside the IDA and personally the guidance and support you've provided me since we first met. It is incalculable and invaluable.
Thank you.
So thank you. Yeah.
Self-promotion at its finest. I guess that's why they gave me the Lifetime Achievement Award at
Yes.
the New York State Economic Development Council last month.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
On that illustrious note, I will ask for a motion.
So moved.
Excellent. I think we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All right.
Thank you.
See y'all in July.
Thank you.
I'm need to inform the chairman and the staff, I will be absent until.
Okay.